Okay, I'm not gonna tease you anymore. Today we're gonna finally review a JDM rod that I've been fishing with for 4 months now. I've been calling this rod the Hammer, and soon you're gonna find out why. But let me first give you the exact model of the rod we're gonna be reviewing. This is a Majorcraft Aji-Do 7G. I will leave a link in the description below to the product page. Not a place where you can buy the rod, just a product page where you can get all of the specs for the rod and whatever other information for the rod is available from the manufacturer. But this is the exact model that I have. AD7-652 because it's 6'5", 2 pieces, and then the small letter T, which stands for tubular tip. And I will say right away that sadly, very sadly, this is the only tubular tip model available in this series. Which is, of course, the reason why I bought this exact model in the first place. Regular foam butt, but look how small it is. I brought here my beloved Yamaga blanks just to give you some comparisons side by side. Look how much smaller the butt is compared to the Yamaga blanks. Now, the diameter of the blank here, there are some graphics over here on the other side. I already showed you those. But the diameter over here is 8.5 millimeters, which for this exact location, for a light power rod, is super thin. Just for comparison, again, the Yamaga blanks, which is ultralight power rod, and it's a true ultralight power rod, this is 9.5, even 9.8 millimeter, and this is 8.5. You can tell how much thinner this one is. And then the handle, this here is a Fuji handle, you can tell. You know, until today, my favorite handles were the handles from the Shimano Soare XR and the other Soare X-Tune rods, because they feel like made of metal. I know they're plastic, but I don't know how they make it. They feel like they're made of metal, and they have this hump here, which for me, because I have huge hands, this hump absolutely snaps into my palm. When the handle has this hump there, I'm telling you, if you are a European dude with big hands, all of a sudden, this rod, instead of wobbling around, it just snaps into your hand. This handle here is every bit as comfortable as the one on my Shimano Soare XR. But I have to say, it's not really better. I just love them both. By the way, when you're touching this plastic here, I read on the website, they say it's plastic, but it's fused with carbon and some titanium. The nut here is either aluminum or titanium. The nut has to be metal. Not only when I tighten it, but also when I'm twitching, my handle sits like this and my thumb is on this metal nut here, and it's metal and hard, and it creates such a good confidence feeling. I absolutely love this handle. No hook keeper, of course. In Japan, putting a hook keeper on a $300 rod is like a heresy. They find that insulting. I gave up even complaining about this thing. I just put these rubber plastic hook keepers. I actually sell them in my shop if some of you are new to my channel. They're pretty cheap. Once in a while you have to replace them, but on the other hand, if you don't like them, if you can somehow fish without this hook keeper, you can keep your rod blank looking clean in this section over here. This here is a Daiwa tungsten jig head. The absolute best application for this rod, but I'm gonna get back to this in a second. By the way, the paint extends only up to here. You can see where it's glossy and shiny. The rest of the blank is just unpainted matte black. No protection from paint or from clear coat. Be very careful when you lean these rods against the rim of the boat, folks, because this carbon is so thin. If you nick it somewhere on some sharp edge of the boat, then you're gonna lift a small crappie and the rod is gonna snap, and you're gonna be thinking, how can this expensive rod snap on a little crappie? No, it wasn't the crappie that snapped it. You compromised the blank with some sharp object, and after that you could have lifted a bluegill and it would snap just the same. The guides are the same titanium frame torzite insert guides, Fuji guides, that you will see on pretty much any Japanese rod except Daiwa or Shimano. Only Daiwa and Shimano have the payroll and the engineers to design their own hardware. Everybody else has to purchase off-the-shelf hardware for these rods, usually from Fuji. These are the exact same guides that you will see actually on the Eradicator. Nothing wrong with these guides. The most beautiful and thin and elegant looking guides. They're tiny, I'm just zoomed in. They're actually very tiny. Now, one comment that I want to make about the guides is, notice that the Majorcraft is a single foot guide. There is only one piece of metal that holds the ring, right? And the Yamaga Blanks, which is an ultralight power rod, has a 2-foot guide. It has 2 pieces of metal that hold the ring, which makes the guide stronger. It also makes it more rigid, a little bit more sensitive, durable, all of that jazz, and a little bit heavier too. Now the interesting thing again is that this is an ultralight power rod and this is a light power rod, and this rod is so stiff. I will show you the action in just a second. But this rod is so stiff that you have to use this rod for some kind of power application, which begs the question, if you made a rod for power applications, why didn't you use a guide with 2 feet or with 2 frames, which is stronger? It just seems like the better fit in terms of, I don't know, engineering approach. That said, I had no problem with this guide. It does save a lot of weight. This Majorcraft rod, folks, even though it's a light power rod, weighs only 55 grams. That's absolutely incredible. That's 15 grams less than the Yamaga Blanks, which is an ultralight power rod. This rod, the Majorcraft, just has a thinner blank. The blank has no paint, it has no clear coat. The guides have only 1 foot instead of 2 feet. Everything in this rod is just thinner and lighter. Alright, let's go to the garage to show you the power and the action of this beautiful blank. And we'll get back here for a few final words and recommended applications. Folks, this is 48 grams of weight. This is almost 2 ounces of weight. I want you to look at the tip of this rod. Look at the tip. Just barely any deflection with almost 2 ounces. Again, 2 ounces is 56 grams. This is 48. I'm gonna talk more about this later, but the tip of this rod is incredibly stiff. And now this is 4 ounces plus the weight of the jig head. Look at this rod. Look at this rod. Look how perfectly parabolic from here to here with 4 ounces, man. This is enough weight for a catfish rod. This is where the backbone of this rod is. The backbone is at the tip. This is why this rod has such beautiful parabolic action. And one last look, this is 6 ounces now, and look at the tip. The tip is still not overloaded. You can tell when the tip is overloaded when the last 1 inch of the rod is vertically down, right? After vertically down, it doesn't matter how much more weight you put. It's pointless to add more weight because the tip is already vertically down. This tip is not vertically down. It's only like 45 degrees down. This is a light power rod. 6 ounces of weight. Look at this tip. Was I exaggerating to call this rod the hammer? All right, fine. One more. This is 8 ounces. 8 ounces, my friends. Look at this perfect from here to here. Perfect parabolic bend. And the tip is still not overloaded. If you are going to a long casting competition, this is theoretically what you want. You don't want extra fast action for a long distance competition. This is what you want. You know, if you go to the product website, link to which will be provided in the description below, the manufacturer even provided a chart with the bending curve of all of the models, and you can confirm on that chart that the bending curve that they have for this rod is exactly what I got in my garage on the wall. And you can see that all of the other models have a fast action, which is a direct function of the fact that all the other models come with a solid tip. So this is just a quick side note why this was the exact model that I bought and why this model is the only model in this entire series that I recommend, at least until they release a new model with a tubular tip. With this kind of physical characteristics, you have to use this rod for some kind of power application, and this is exactly what I've been using it for. I've been using this rod to twitch or jig, whatever you want to call it, heavy tungsten jigs on Tennessee River, 15, 20, sometimes 25 feet deep. For this specific application, I have never used a rod that is better than this. Now you can also put a Kitek here on this exact same jig, and you can swim the jig instead of jigging it. But when you're swimming it, you kind of don't take advantage of the stiff tip, and if you are going to be swimming this jig, you might as well swim it with the Yamaga blanks. I prefer to swim my Kiteks on my 2 Yamaga blanks. I have a 6'7" and a 6'10", and they're just my favorite, rods for swimming big heavy Kiteks for white bass in the winter. For this rod, the perfect application is again jigging or twitching heavy tungsten jigs, or the other perfect application is drop shot. Why? Because when we're fishing drop shot, we're lifting 5, sometimes 7 grams off the bottom. And when you're lifting 7 grams off the bottom, you want a rod with a stiff tip. Otherwise, every time you lift the tungsten off the bottom, the tip is going to be bending and flexing and killing all of the motion and killing and numbing the feel in your hand. So if you want a dedicated rod for drop shotting, of everything I have ever tried, this here is the best. I have to also say that because this rod is so light and so kind of rigid, it has an absolutely phenomenal feel in the hand, folks. The only rods in my whole life where I have had such a phenomenal, extremely razor needle sharp tip kind of feel was the prototype rods from Graphite Leader. But those rods had very thin, solid tips. To have this kind of a feel with a much thicker tubular tip, I have never held a tubular tip rod in my hand that feels like this. I'm telling you, it doesn't matter how many JDM rods you own already before trying this rod. Holding this rod in your hand is really something else. The only way, again, to describe the feel of this rod in the hand is with one of these prototype rods that don't even have a handle. Those prototype rods that I'm talking about from Graphite Leader, it's basically just two nuts here and here to hold the reel. No butt, no paint, no nothing, just bare blank and a reel strapped up to it. But this is a beautiful and comfortable rod, and it still feels like a prototype. Okay, one last thing and I'm gonna close the video. I'm certain that by the time you see this review, the rod will be sold out everywhere, including in Japan, because a lot of people already guessed the model while I was fishing with it the last few months. But if you're interested in the rod, save the product link in your favorites, and 3 or 6 months from now, just check the stores again. If there is enough interest about this rod, and I'm pretty sure that there will be, the second batch that will hit the stores probably, I don't know, 6, maybe even 12 months from now, will be larger, and this rod will eventually be available. And if you one day manage to get this rod in your hands, I want to strongly recommend one of these two reels for this rod. This here is the 2025 Shimano Soare XR in the 2000 PG model. The reason this model is important is because it gives you 4.4 gear ratio. You are going to be using this rod for some kind of power application, and you are going to want to have a low gear ratio reel on it. Low gear equals power. The other reel that looks and feels just as amazing is the Twin Power, again, C2000 PG, C2000S PG. The PG is the important part because these two reels come with 4.4 gear ratio. And I'm telling you, 4.4 gear ratio just feels so good with this rod. Pulling these heavy jigs with 4.4 gear ratio is just like nothing. When you catch a 15-inch white bass, you can actually reel on the fish a little bit. You don't need to pump with the rod all the time and then reel. Oh, and the very last thing, if you get both the rod and the reel, the last thing you want to put is some 2.5 to 3 pound polyester line. Don't go with the braid, it will kill the feel of your rod. If you put braid on this reel, you can just throw the rod and the reel on the garbage. That's how horrible it's gonna feel. No braid, don't go that route. Braid will kill everything. It will kill the feel, it will kill the joy, the fight, everything. 2.5 to 3 pound polyester is what you want. And if polyester is too exotic for you and you don't want any part of that, then get 2.5 to 3 pound Japanese fluorocarbon, whatever you want. Varivas, Sunline, they're all just as good and just as reliable. But okay, this is all I had for this review. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. Don't email me, I'm not gonna reply to emails. Leave your questions in the comments below and I will reply all of them. Thanks for watching this one. I'll see you soon. Bye bye, folks.